And we are. So we are, it says we are preparing to live stream. So I think we should be live. So hello everyone and welcome to another Facebook Live. My name is Jana Ratik and I am so excited to be here with all of you today. We have a very special guest here with us and he has been here with us before, Richard Smith. So thank you so much for being here with us today.
Jana, an absolute pleasure as always. We had a fantastic live last time, and I'm sure we'll have another fantastic one today also.
Amazing. So those of you who are joining us for the first time today, today we're specifically going to talk a little bit about men's health and men's mental health, because June is locally here in South Africa and also on a global level is Men's Health Awareness Month. So if you have any questions related to that or anything related to health or performance and nutrition, you are welcome to pop those questions in the comment section. Before we dive in and before I give you a bit of a more detailed introduction on Richard, I just have two exciting announcements to make. So the first one is, you might have seen that we have started to grow our Patreon community. And I would really like to invite each and every one of you to go and have a look at what we're doing there. This is really also part of the Noakes Foundation's efforts to help raise funds towards our cause. So please join us there, join the community. There'll be in-depth articles and research on the diet and lifestyle behind the scenes videos. We're going to do some live Q&A in the future, and we'll be sharing educational resources that's only for our Patreon members. And then the next exciting announcement, which is very much in line with the month of June, is that the Nutrition Network will be launching Metabolism and the Mind, a metabolic approach to treating psychiatric disease, and this is launching on the 26th of June. And it is currently under special offer of 20% off until then. This comprehensive training will empower healthcare practitioners with the knowledge and expertise necessary to comprehend and address the metabolic complexities underlying mental health disorders. So if you are interested in this topic, I'm going to ask our media team just to pop the link to this course in the comment section, but also go have a look at the Nutrition Network Facebook page. So Richard, more about you. So Richard Smith is not just a name. He's a testament to the incredible impact that embracing the ketogenic lifestyle can have on one's health and well-being. At the age of 33, Richard received a diagnosis that changed his life: type 2 diabetes, accompanied by a staggering body fat percentage of nearly 60%. He then embarked on a journey of self-discovery and transformation that led him to the doorstep of ketosis. It was with a journey marked by challenges, setbacks, and ultimately triumph. As a nutritionist, professional athlete, and British champion, Richard is on a mission to spread the message of real health and nutrition. Through his organization, Keto Pro, he provides not only high-quality nutritional products, but also invaluable support and guidance to those seeking to embrace the ketogenic lifestyle. Richard is also one of the Noakes Foundation ambassadors, and we are very happy to have him as part of our team. So thank you again, Richard, for being here with us today.
Way too kind. What an incredible introduction. Thank you so much. Pleasure, as I say, to be here again, Jana. Super excited. Yeah, I'm looking forward to this one. Thank you.
Amazing. So Richard, I actually just want to ask you, for those of the audience members who hasn't been on one of our lives before, maybe you can just give a little bit of background and your journey and your whole story and how you came to be where you are today.
Yes, for sure. And I will keep this one short, I promise, because I do have a habit of going off on one. An incredibly long story put short. I was in my mid to late 20s, clinically obese. I was type 2 diabetic. I suffered with severe daily debilitating migraines, chronic fatigue, depression, anxiety, arthritic pains, migraines, which would, I would suffer with these so severely each day. I was on 3 different medications, and these would lead me to being blind on most days if I were not to take my medication. And in my mid to late 20s, I would struggle to walk up a flight of stairs without having to stop or be severely out of breath. And I was told by my doctor that it was just a fact of life. I didn't want to resign to that fact. And it wasn't a fact. It was something that I was told, that I believed because it came from the medical community. But I wasn't old. I was in my mid, to late 20s, and I decided to make changes ultimately. So I began with restricting bread. I took bread out, and that was the beginning of my journey. I began to lose an awful lot of weight, which wasn't the goal initially. The goal was to make myself feel less bloated, as it were. I thought if I could make myself feel less bloated, that I would feel a little bit better about myself. I took bread out, and that was the start of my journey. An incredibly long story put short, within 12 months of really getting into the crux of this, because there were stages that led up to my full gravitation, if you like, into a ketogenic lifestyle. But 12 months saw a complete transformation of a loss of 107 pounds, reversal of diabetes, my migraines, which I still suffer with today, but I don't suffer with them every day. The migraines that I get now are once or twice a year, and these are driven predominantly by lack of sleep or stress, which come hand in hand when you're self-employed, unfortunately. But everything else has gone. I'm medication free. I'm now the healthiest and fittest that I have ever been. And as you said, I went on to become a amateur athlete originally in men's physique bodybuilding. I lost all of this weight. I was now incredibly skinny, lean, but I looked small. So I began working out in the gym. I began to gain some quality lean muscle mass, which we are told is impossible within the low-carb community. We're told that we need carb to build muscle, which is a fallacy, by the way. But I began to gain this lean muscle mass, and I wanted to tell the world about my secret. I felt that I'd found a secret, and I wanted to tell the world about it. So I thought the best way to do this was visually. If people could see the transformation from me being clinically obese to being in gym shape with abs and veins bulging, and that doesn't necessarily mean you're healthy, by the way, but people perceive that to be. So I persevered with that, and I became a professional athlete. And I went on to become, as you rightly say, British and European champion at a professional level. Number one in Europe, basically, in my age category, from being clinically obese and diabetic and suffering with a myriad of health conditions. And there's nothing special about me. I'm not special. Anybody can do these things. Anybody can transform their life. We are fed a massive list of misconceptions in regards to health and well-being. And with the best will in the world, we can be consuming foods that we think are healthy that are in fact detrimental to our health. The fundamentals that make us human have been taken away, and we've been led down a garden path, I believe, of miscommunication and misinformation. And all I've done is change these things, and anybody can do what I do. I wasn't genetically gifted. I wasn't genetically better than anybody else that I competed against, or anybody else on the planet for that matter. My genes, in fact, are pretty poor, and I've got some pictures somewhere. Maybe we can pull those out later. But I was using a tool that nobody else was using, and this is what allowed me to succeed. And I've carried this through, and I continue to, as you say, spread the good word, work with yourself at the Norks Foundation, each and every day, public speaking events, lives, podcasts, trying to spread the word on true health and well-being.
Thank you, Richard. I mean, I've heard your story a few times now, and there's always something else that kind of pops to me. And when I think it's just really incredible and so inspirational. So thank you for sharing that with us. You spoke about, how some people have this idea that, to be healthy, you have to have like the veins and the muscles and the six pack, right? And we know that's not true. But I'd like to hear from you, what does health mean to you?
Health to me, I think, covers a few different types of brackets. Now, when I was bodybuilding, bodybuilding isn't healthy in regards to competing. So training and working out is fantastic. All of those sides of things make us healthy, but the competing itself isn't healthy. Being 2% body fat isn't healthy, but it was fit for purpose. It was there to achieve a goal. I want to be full of energy. I want crystal mental clarity. I want to live, to an age exceeding 100. I once believed, due to my health conditions, that I wasn't going to see my 30th birthday. And now, if I don't break 100, I will be incredibly disappointed. Everything since gravitating down this road, I can only explain it as if the curtain has been opened, if you like. I can now see clearly. I can see colors. Everything is vibrant. My energy's through the roof. My mental clarity is crystal clear. I've begun running and cycling, so I've come away from the bodybuilding, and now I compete in running and cycling events and duathlons. And this is a complete 180 compared to the bodybuilding lifestyle. And each and every time that I run and compete, I become a little bit fitter. My VO2 max increases. I'm 40. I don't feel 40. I don't feel that I look 40. And I feel healthier and fitter than I've ever been previously. And this shows every time that I compete. I compete in races with guys nearly half my age. And I'm fairly new to running, having only begun, last year in 23. But for me, it's about feeling good, feeling happy, having this mental clarity, that this crystal clear vision. I was on a podcast with Dr. Zoe Harcoom a little while ago, who I know you guys are familiar with, obviously. And she said to me that a condition that a lot of her clients speak to her about is called TAT, tired all the time. And that was me. I was tired all the time. But I became sick and tired of being sick and tired. And that's why I decided to make the change. Everything that I was trying wasn't working. So why not try something different? And in there, I found the key to optimal health and well-being. And this is what I do every day. I'm in pursuit of optimal health and well-being. I live a fairly strict lifestyle, or at least what many would regard to be strict. But I don't find it strict, and I'm not against certain compounds and things that maybe others would be, because I believe that if they confer a benefit, then I'm more than happy to put these in. I'm in pursuit of optimal health. And if someone were to say to me that spinning round on one leg 3 times and touching the floor before doing a run is going to allow you to run faster, I would be, if it was there, heavily evidence-based and backed up, with clinical trials, then I would be doing this. So I'm not against, certain compounds and things, and I believe that many people think that I'm anti-carb. I'm not anti-carbohydrate. I just believe that we don't need them. In fact, I know we don't need them from an exogenous source, but excessive amounts of glucose is detrimental. And I think in there lies the key, is sifting through the weeds and finding the truth amongst all of this misinformation and these miscommunications.
Thank you. That's such a lovely answer. You really touched on all the different aspects of health, and also elaborated on how kind of what you thought was healthy changed for you throughout your own personal journey. And now my next question is really about, why do you think, or why is it important for us to differentiate between, let's say, women's health, men's health, and general health? Why is that so important?
I think biologically we're all the same. And I think that, it's men, we're not meant to have feelings. Men are meant to be hard, and we're not meant to. Women will wake up in the morning and they'll make themselves feel good and look pretty. And men are meant to wake up and not feel and don't care. But we do. And we really do. And to be honest, we probably care just as much, if not more. But we can't seem to be doing these things. It's not meant, it's not seen to be the things that men do, but we stress, we worry just as much, if not more, than women. So the mental aspect for me, is particularly profound. Through my life, I found it difficult gravitating through mental health aspects in regards to what I was meant to be and who, I was meant to be. But the foods that we consume have a massive impact on how we feel, how these hormones are made every day. If we look at a basic level, hormones need specific compounds. Cholesterol being one, which is one that is heavily demonized within the nutritional world. And other compounds such as zinc and things, for the production of testosterone in particular. We need cholesterol and zinc, for example, to make these compounds. Two things that we can get predominantly from animal proteins. And I think that's where the miscommunication is. We're led down this garden path and we're consuming foods that allow us not to produce these compounds and enable us to produce these hormones that we need. And we can get into the science into that a little bit later if you like.
Yes, definitely, because we actually have a question here from someone, which ties into this. So I think I'm just going to go to it. It's from Hannah, and it's asking, how important are testosterone levels for mental health? And is there a difference between minimum and optimal levels? And how can one boost testosterone naturally?
Fantastic question. So testosterone is important for both men and women. So we must understand that estrogen was once testosterone. So testosterone is important for both. In regards to ranges, blood tests, I think, are a tool. So things like this are tools, but we shouldn't use them as the rule. We shouldn't. Everybody is different. Ranges work differently for everybody. And I'll give you a brief example with this. Our good friend, Dr. Sean Baker, has incredibly low testosterone, yet he is absolutely humongous and muscle-bound and incredibly strong. So these compounds work differently from person to person. When we look at blood tests, if we are out of range, we begin to worry about our ranges and whether there are problems, yet we may feel perfectly fit and healthy. And in those cases, I believe that we are concerned when we shouldn't be. If we are not well, then we can use blood tests as a gauge. So the reason I say that is that my testosterone, I get checked once or twice a year, not for my benefit. I do a full blood panel. I get all my bloods done, my cholesterol, and we can get into the cholesterol a little bit later also if you want to, because mine is incredibly high, by the way. And if anything, I wish it were higher. Which may shock many of the listeners, but my testosterone has fluctuated many times throughout my journey. Initially, it went incredibly high. Then it went to an incredibly low level, yet my energy levels were through the roof. I was still able to build muscle. It didn't seem to impact my mood or sex drive. And since then, they've recovered now to what would be deemed to be a normal range. And typically what happens is during this transition into low carb, a ketogenic, or even a carnivore based lifestyle, we see an elevation in testosterone, and then it drops after a year or so. But then we see we start to see this these changes back to normal ranges. But for me, it's never impacted any of my body's ability to increase muscle, have energy, or it's never affected my sex drive. So ranges, I think we need to take with a pinch of salt. But testosterone is important. Now, again, what we need to make testosterone, two compounds in particular that we are told to avoid. One is cholesterol, but the body makes cholesterol. If we don't consume cholesterol, the body will make it. The problem is many of the foods that we consume in modern day, things like vegetable oils, contain phytosterols. They're plant sterols, basically plant cholesterol, and they look so close to human cholesterol that this prevents the body from making human cholesterol, which means we lower our cholesterol. And this is what a typical doctor would tell us to do in order to lower our cholesterol, because we're told that low cholesterol is healthy. even LDL is important for the body. LDL is the compound that heals and repairs the body. So LDL will leave the liver. It will drop off lipid cargo in order to heal and repair the body. And that doesn't sound so damaging to me. In fact, quite the opposite. But LDL can become damaged. It can become glycated and oxidized through excess carbohydrate consumption. And it can become oxidized from seed oil consumption, linoleic acid, vegetable oils, sunflower oil, so on and so forth. The problem with this is many compounds in the supermarket contain these oils. So even if we are cooking in quality fats, these vegetable oils are everywhere. They're in almost every packet, in anything that is in a shiny packet in the supermarket, any sauce, any cakes, biscuits, crisps, and so on and so forth, contain these compounds. And what they do is they artificially lower our cholesterol. Now we have less cholesterol available to fight off viruses and infections. We have less cholesterol to make testosterone. And cholesterol is imperative for life. It's essential for cell formation, cell communication, nutrient absorption, nutrient transportation, the production of hormones, and it's essential for healing. This is why later in life we seem to suffer with hormonal issues, because we've had a lifetime of, what better word, of lack of abuse. We've been consuming toxic compounds, and we haven't been consuming enough saturated fats, and we've been consuming too many of these phytosterols. Now, these phytosterols, they are a toxin to the body, and we know this because the body will try to excrete them. So the body will lower the limit of phytosterols within the body to around 2%. And if you were to Google or use a search engine for a condition called cytosterolemia, cytosterolemia is an inherited condition in which the body hasn't the ability to excrete phytosterols. And what you'll see with a simple test is a simple search is that in situations in which the body cannot excrete this toxin, risk of heart disease increases greatly, which is the opposite to what we are told. And you guys can Google this, and I encourage you to do that. Google cytosterolemia. And there in itself, you can see straight away that on one hand, we have, a community saying that these compounds reduce cardiovascular disease, but then cytosterolemia will tell us that, when we have the inability to excrete these toxins, cardiovascular disease and heart conditions increase greatly. So we need to remove these compounds, but we need human cholesterol. We need cholesterol to produce testosterone. So we need to avoid these phytosterols, these vegetable and seed oils. And that's really important. We can get these compounds from natural sources, animal proteins in particular, and maybe cook in things like butter, tallow, lard, ghee, but avoid these phytosterols. These compounds don't come from vegetables, they come from seeds, and we use toxic chemicals like hexane to extract these oils, and we need to bleach them with peroxide because they come out a dark grey color. You can run your diesel car on these oils, and they were originally invented for, I believe it was World War II, in order to lubricate the ships. So we created an industry to fuel these ships, and after the war, there was an industry that didn't have a market, and these compounds have found their way into the food industry, but they're not fit for human consumption, at least in my opinion. If you can run your diesel car on a compound, it shouldn't be going into your mouth. I mean, would you cook your food in diesel? So these compounds have a massive impact on testosterone. And then we look at things like zinc. Zinc is essential for the production of testosterone. Animal proteins, particularly beef, red meat, have an incredibly high volume of zinc. We can't get zinc in high quantities from plant compounds. But again, we're also told, within the health community to avoid animal proteins, particularly red meat, in the fear of causing cancers and things. Which, if you look into the data, and we can really get into the weeds with that also, but I don't want to go down a rabbit hole. So we need to eat foods as nature intended. If we think of how we've evolved our entire existence, we would have eaten lots of animal proteins and things that, if we look at what nature provides us with this perfectly packaged present, protein and fat. Every compound, every animal protein on the planet comes with protein and fat. Nature gives us this perfectly packaged present. But what do? In our wisdom, thinking that we know better, we take the protein and we remove the fat. We need the fat. The fat is super important. Every cell in the body is made of cholesterol and fats. The brain is 60% saturated fats. The myelin sheath that sends the signals through the body is made of cholesterol. So these compounds are essential. So in order to increase, testosterone, the best thing to do is avoid the compounds that are going to avoid the body's ability to use zinc, which is very important. So we get zinc from animal proteins. Now, the compounds that can block these are things like lectins and phytic acids. So phytic acid, for example, can block the absorption of zinc by as much as 100%. So to put that into perspective, if you were to eat a piece of beef with, say, some pasta or something, the phytic acids within that pasta are enough to potentially block the absorption of that zinc by as much as 100%. So yes, we're consuming part of the compound that we need, but what we co-consume with that has a massive impact. And grains in particular are high in lectins and phytic acids, anti-nutrients that prevent the body from absorbing these essential nutrients. And they block our body's ability to produce these compounds. So it comes back to the food that we're eating. Eat red meat. Eggs is another fantastic source of choline. Eat beef and eggs and lamb are foods that I consume every day. Lamb in particular, I don't know what your guys' availability of lamb is in South Africa, but it's found in abundance in South Wales in the UK with me. And if you look at the amino profile and the vitamin and mineral profile, lamb, I believe, is superior, and it's a lot higher also in omega-3s, which also allows us to offset this omega-3 to omega-6 ratio. So eat animal proteins, particularly red meat, and eggs if you can tolerate them would be my biggest advice on there in order to increase testosterone. And also working out. If you can lift weights, this also has an impact. But I'm a big advocate, as you know, of training and being fit and active. But that, to me, is a small portion of health and well-being. I don't believe that you have to do any training whatsoever to be fit and healthy. I work with a lot of clients who have no intention or inclination towards training, and they gravitate into what I believe to be healthy eating. They lose a ton of weight, which is a side effect of being healthy, by the way. And they thrive without ever having to do any strenuous activity. Although I do believe that we can increase health and well-being by doing so. It's not something I don't want to put people off being fit and healthy by thinking that they have to hit the gym 5-6 times a week. That isn't the case. If you can train with it, then even better, but you don't have to. The biggest bang for the buck is going to come through diet over anything else.
Thank you so much, Richard. I mean, here in South Africa, we do eat a lot of lamb and mutton. Unfortunately, it's one of the more expensive cuts of meat, types of meat. But I don't know about there, but here you won't find like a commercialized farm that farms, sheep. It's mostly, I don't know a single farm that's on a commercial level farm. It's all free range, mostly like grass fed, So yeah, definitely. I want to ask you about your cholesterol specifically because it piques my interest. But before we do that, can you just say again, what is that condition that you mentioned earlier that you said the audience members should Google? Because I see someone's asking, just please repeat that for us.
Apologies. Yes, that's my strong Welsh accent coming through there. Cytosterolemia it begins with an S. I believe it's S-I-T-O, so S-I-T-O sterolemia. So if you type in cytosterolemia, you should find that on any search engine. And yeah, this is an inherited genetic condition in which the body has the inability to excrete phytosterols, which are plant cholesterols. Plant cholesterols look so close to human cholesterol that the body confuses them. And interestingly, when we are, and this is going off slightly, but it's all to do with health and well-being, so forgive me, but when we are out in the sun and the UVA hits the skin, the UVA increases nitric oxide, and it's nitric oxide that gives us all of these health benefits. We think it's vitamin D, but vitamin D is a marker to this. It isn't actually the elevation of vitamin D. Vitamin D is being released to help protect the skin from the sun. Yes, we need vitamin D, but it's the UVA hitting the skin that's increasing the nitric oxide. But we need cholesterol to make our vitamin D. Now, if we have a body that is full of plant cholesterols, phytosterols, we don't have this ability to create that vitamin D efficiently, and this is why we burn in the sun, and this leads to other serious skin conditions like skin cancers and so on and so forth. And I don't know if you have noticed this also, Jana, but I used to burn intensely in the sun. I would go beetroot red and I would peel and I'd become incredibly ill. Tamps of sun cream wouldn't do anything at all. I don't use sunscreen anymore. There's so many compounds in sunscreen that, and I'm not telling you not to use it. This is just my opinion. I don't use it because of the compounds that are in there. But what I find now, since I've removed these vegetable oils, I no longer burn in the sun. I go out in the sun and my body has the ability to protect itself. It's been many, many years since I put any compound on my skin. So we need human cholesterol is the takeaway from there. We don't want plant cholesterols. These are two different things.
Yeah, I also stopped using sunscreen. Although I have to say, I mean, the summer sun here in Cape Town can be very harsh, and I don't think my very white European skin was meant necessarily initially for the African sun. But I then just try and stay out of the sun during the worst time of the day, and then otherwise I'm fine. And same with my husband, same with my kids. So that's so interesting. And I often hear more and more people talk about that and say that, when they start cutting out seed oils, they just don't need sunscreen anymore.
Yeah.
So interesting. But you mentioned sorry, go ahead.
So yeah, it is incredibly interesting. And also coming back to what you just said there, I mean, it's UVB that are causing the issues. UVA is incredibly important, and UVA is at the strongest early in the morning and late in the day. So if you are going to, so sun is important. We need sun. Most of the vitamin D we get from animal proteins, believe it or not, which we can't get from plants also. So again, another big tick for animal proteins. This is why I live in South Wales, incredibly rainy and cloudy. I see very little sun because I'm stuck in my cave most of the time working, but my vitamin D levels are incredibly high. And I do this. I'm genetically predispositioned to make more, vitamin D from animal proteins over the exposure to the sun. But sun is incredibly important for circadian rhythm and many other functions. Nitric oxide being another, and so on and so forth. Nitric oxide is an incredible compound, an important vasodilator, directly correlated to longevity. So get out in the sun early in the morning or late in the evening, but try to avoid being in the sun when the sun is the highest in the sky. This is when UVB is at its strongest, and this is where most of the damage is going to come from.
Yes, it's so interesting. You mentioned earlier that your cholesterol is very high. Is that so? So tell us a little bit about that, and how do you manage that with your doctor?
So yeah, I think it's high, although a colleague of yours I was speaking with recently, Dr. Jen Unwin. Jen's is, I think, twice what mine is again, which is incredible. But for those of you who don't know Dr. Jen Unwin, she's incredibly fit and healthy. And her cholesterol is double mine, but mine is double figures. So mine is around 10.26. My LDL is 8 point something, which is higher than most people's, total cholesterol. But I wish it were higher because, again, cholesterol is essential for life. We can't live without it. And again, just to reiterate, it's essential for cell formation, cell communication, nutrient absorption, nutrient transportation. It's essential for healing, and it's essential for the production of hormones. And I can't stress that enough. We need cholesterol in order to make our hormones. We need it for our neurotransmitters and for methylation and functions within the body. These are compounds that we need. And again, to be devoid of these our entire life, this is what leads to issues later in life. But yeah, my LDL is 8 point something, but it is what we call pattern A. Pattern A is healthy LDL. So LDL can become damaged. And again, we mentioned this earlier, it can become glycated and oxidized. And I'll keep this incredibly simple. I won't go on too much, but every LDL particle has a receptor called an ApoB100 receptor. And when the liver releases these cholesterol particles, it travels through the blood and through the body, and it drops off lipid cargo in order to heal and repair the body. Then it goes back to the liver for recycling. And it's this receptor, this ApoB100 receptor, that allows access to the liver. Without it, the liver will deny it access. In a healthy state, it goes back into the liver, it's recycled, and it goes along its merry way, carrying out this action again. But when it becomes damaged, when it becomes glycated and oxidized, the liver no longer allows it access, but it still tries to carry out its work. So it travels through the body again, and then it will travel into the subendothelial space where there are cells called macrophages. And these macrophages have a receptor called a scavenger receptor. And the scavenger receptor recognizes this damaged particle where the liver can't or didn't, and it allows it access. And then it'll cram these damaged LDL particles in until this macrophage grows into a foam cell, and it's the foam cell that we see as a start of atherosclerotic plaques. But it isn't cholesterol that caused it. It's the damaged particles, which again are caused by glycation and oxidation. Glycation is through excess sugars, glucose, where the cells, in simple terms, become sticky. And oxidation through these toxic compounds, these vegetable oils, and other factors as well. There are other contributing factors to this, but your LDL can be healthy. It can be pattern A, and there's simple tests you can do to discover what you have. We want high LDL. So if we have a cholesterol profile, we want to check to see that our LDL is 1.5 or higher generally. Triglycerides, we want to be as low as possible. Below 1 is fantastic. Below 0.5 is even better. And we want a triglyceride to HDL ratio as low as possible. And with these in mind, if our triglyceride to HDL ratio is low, then we have basically healthy cholesterol. And that's what mine is. So it's not pattern B. It isn't damaged. My cholesterol is healthy, and that's why I'm not concerned. But again, I want to, if I had the choice, I'd increase my cholesterol even more so. But it's the proof is in the pudding, as we say. And one of the graphics that I usually mention and show during presentations is a picture of my arm falling on operation. And it was an operation in which the wound had to remain open. The wound had to remain open. It had to be packed daily. And I was told to expect a 12-week recovery period. So it had to be packed in order to heal from the inside out and not to close up and leave a void. It took me 24 days to heal from this. And the doctors and nurses were incredibly baffled by how quick that I'd recovered. And when I told them, the food that I was eating, I eat a high protein diet full of natural fats and my cholesterol, they couldn't believe that a lifestyle and diet like this would allow it to recover so quickly. But 24 days, and I've got a graphic of that. I'll see if I can find it as we talk on. But yeah, it's the triglyceride to HDL ratio that is the important ratio for me when I look at a healthy cholesterol profile.
So interesting. So I'm also tending to feel like I prefer a higher cholesterol than a lower one. And recently, my local community clinic had like this wellness check. You can go get checked out for like they did blood glucose screening, cholesterol, and blood pressure. And I just went because I like going to these things to see, what are they going to tell me and what they're going to say. And then my cholesterol was, I think it was 5.9. And then also the lady started talking about like, I need to start making like lifestyle changes. And I was thinking like, that's not even that high, but that is perceived as too high. And that, if I don't get it down somehow, I'll have to go to statin. And the other concerning is they only look at total cholesterol screening. So obviously, you can now go and get more details there. But not everyone has that, that opportunity or the privilege to be able to just go and get a test done. And then the other thing you mentioned about your wound, I don't know if I told you this, but in the beginning of the year, we had a bit of an accident at home, and my husband and I both burned terribly with cooking oil that caught fire. And at that point, we were doing what was World Carnivore Month. And it wasn't cooking oil, it was lard. We were rendering fat, and then so just it's not cooking oil, lard, and we were rendering fat, and then we forgot on the stove and it caught fire. Anyway, long story short, we burned terribly, and my right hand, these two fingers of my thumb, actually burned so badly that they thought I might need skin graft, and we had to go to the hospital for checkups every 2 to 3 days, and then at some point they had to remove almost all of my skin layers on my fingers. And then 2 or 3 days later, when I returned back to the hospital, it had completely grown back. Wow. And you cannot, if you look now at my fingers, you won't be able really to tell even where I burned. And I think it was during that time, I think I saw a video of Dr. Anthony Chafee where he spoke about an article where they would give burn victims up to 30 eggs a day to help with the healing of their wounds. And I don't know, I can't say for certain, but I am also quite sure that might have not the eggs necessarily, but the high protein diet, the high cholesterol and high fat diet that I was following during that month contributed to the healing of my wounds. And like I say, you can't see anything. My legs also burned. You can barely see any marks. So
it is. And look, it makes perfect sense because every cell in the body is made of protein. Every cell in the body is made of fat. And these are two things that we avoid in our diet generally. Yet, they're the most important. Every time we consume a bolus of food, we should be predominating animal proteins because, again, nature provides us with this perfectly packaged present. Protein comes with fat. If we eat animal proteins, we are co-consuming the fat with it. Let's look at an egg, for example, contains almost equal numbers of protein and fat. Beef, the same. Chicken breast with the skin on. Salmon, so on and so forth. And it's, again, in our wisdom, we strip the fat out thinking that we know better, but the protein is meant to come with the fat. And I'm convinced that this is why you healed so quickly. If you provide the body with the nutrients or the tools that it needs, then work is going to get done. If you were devoid of these compounds, then the body is going to be slow at healing. And unfortunately, that is, the high percentage, the majority of the people on high street, they consume low protein, and their diet is high in sugar and other toxic compounds to boot. But it's protein and fat. I think that's the biggest takeaway so far.
Definitely. So I realized I never said hi to our audience members. So I'm really going to go over to that comment section because I see a few people that said hi. So Maritza saying hi, good afternoon, Jan and Richard. N. Peter for saying good morning from Michigan, USA. And then Janice has also joined us here today. Hi, Janice. Always good to see you. Oswald here saying hi, Jan and Richard. And then Susan all the way from Canada. So it's really lovely to have, I feel like, such a diverse group of people. Just a reminder, if you have any questions for Richard, you're welcome to pop them in the comment section and we will get to it. Richard, I want to talk a little bit more about depression and anxiety in men. And I looked at some stats before we actually started this conversation, and I saw in 2021, they did a survey and they found that more than 50% of, not much more, but more than 50% of women tend to go and seek support out when needed, whereas as little as 40% of women would do the same. And then 80% of suicides were found to be done by men, which is very tragic to hear. And you mentioned earlier in your introduction that you yourself have struggled with depression, anxiety, and I'm sure we all know that health, nutrition and exercise plays a big role in our mental state. But have you worked with clients that, particularly men, that struggle with some of these mental health struggles? And how do you support them, or what are your suggestions to them besides the nutrition and exercise?
Yeah, fantastic question. Look, I think this is a condition that almost every one of us on the planet now has suffered with at some point in our life. I remember when I was younger, things like depression and anxiety, they didn't really exist. At least, they weren't talked about. You were either happy or sad, but now you're always depressed.
Well, I remember from being a kid, like, if there's someone had depression or anxiety, it's not, you don't talk about it, and
Yeah.
it's a shameful thing.
Exactly. And I think this is another reason, coming back to what you said, on your original question, the difference between men and women. I think women are more likely to talk about problems, but men are meant to be seen as being manly and, just suck it up and get on with things. But, I suffered severely with depression and anxiety, and I had no reason to be depressed, really. But I was on medication for this. I was on medication for anxiety and depression. I don't feel, I still get anxious sometimes because I believe that it could be, I believe that's a spectrum. And I think if you are a person who suffers with something like that, you're always on the spectrum, but you can massively gravitate to the lower end of this. And I think this is something that most of us will suffer from. If one has to get up and give a speech in front of a room full of people, you're going to feel anxious, so this is a natural human response. But when it becomes all encompassing and it controls your life, and this is a completely different matter. And it did with me. So my anxiety and depression was so bad that my life was spent living in boxes. I lived in my box, and I would jump into my metal box to drive to another big box, my place of work. And then I would walk into my small box within inside the big box, my office, and I would carry out my work throughout the day. I was incredibly unsociable. I wouldn't go to the works canteen. I would eat my food at my desk, staying in my box. And then I would perform this in reverse to go home, and I wouldn't go anywhere else. My life was spent living in boxes. And now I've made a career of breaking boxes. I break boxes for a living. And I think that's incredibly important. And any one of us can become experts at breaking boxes. We don't want to become confined to these boxes. Now, mine was so severe that I would have to wait until there were no neighbors in my street before I went to my car. Not because I was rude, but because I never felt worthy of the company of others. I had an incredibly low opinion of myself, and I never felt worthy to be around other people. Now, I changed my diet and my lifestyle, and for full disclosure, I'm carnivore predominantly now. So I'm still in a ketogenic state, because that's what carnivore is, and I believe that this is a big misconception within the community. Keto and carnivore are essentially the same thing, because ketosis is a metabolic state, and you're in this metabolic state when you're more animal based. But my journey began low carb, then I became what we call dirty keto, which fantastic benefits. Just the production of ketones, by the way, is incredibly beneficial to the body. Beta hydroxybutyrate breaches the blood-brain barrier and allows us to send lots and lots of energy to the brain at an incredibly high rate. The BHB, beta hydroxybutyrate, allows us to increase mechanical efficiency of the heart by as much as 35% and blood flow by as much as 70%. It blocks inflammation, blocks NLRP3 inflammasome, and it also has a big impact on the glutamate to GABA ratio. Glutamate and GABA are excitatory and relaxing parts of the brain. So if we consume lots of caffeine, for example, this can lead to anxiety because this will alter the glutamate to GABA ratio. But ketones will put this back in check. It will allow us to put this ratio back to where it can be. Therefore, by default, allowing us to help combat anxiety and depression. And there are other mechanisms involved as well. And I'll simplify this down because it isn't just about ketones either. But I went from being dirty keto into clean. And then, I gravitated over many years to where I am now. But any gravitation towards low carb, you're going to see a benefit. If you can become ketogenic, even better. if you can predominate animal proteins over anything else, then you're going to be a lot fitter and healthier. We're all on our own journey. And I've done this through incremental changes. So I didn't do it through step change. I didn't wake up yesterday and just become, this person that I am now. I've achieved this through incremental changes through the years. And the reason I say this, Jana, is it's important to understand that we're only human. We all fall off the wagon. We all have, little treats or cheats, whatever you want to call them. It's important to understand that it's all about the rule and not the exception. Consistency is key. Just write off anything that you've done, that you don't want to do, or you're upset that you've done. Just get back to eating real food, and everything will fall back into place. It's all about the rule and not the exception. Consistency is key. But what I found when I gravitated into this way of eating is that my anxiety and depression went away. I just thought it was coincidence, but when you look into how the neurotransmitters are created in the body, so our neurotransmitters are things like epinephrine, norepinephrine, serotonin, melatonin, dopamine, so on and so forth. These are things that allow us to be happy, or they can lead us to being sad. These are created through 3 amino acids, tryptophan, tyrosine, and phenylalanine, which are predominated in animal proteins, but we can get from plants. These 3 amino acids are then converted into our neurotransmitters, and then we're meant to feel happy and fantastic, brilliant. But there are other ingredients to bake the cake, if you like. And maybe that's not the right terminology for what we are speaking with today, but I'll roll with it. We need eggs. We need eggs to make the cake. Without the eggs, we can't make the cake. And these cofactors, the eggs in this case, are things like zinc, iron, magnesium, vitamin B3, vitamin B6, vitamin B12. These are compounds which we can only find predominantly in animal proteins, and the ones that we can find, from plants are quite often blocked by these other compounds like the phytic acid and the lectins. And again, as we mentioned earlier, zinc can be blocked by as much as 100% with a co-ingestion of phytic acid. So just by consuming these compounds, we reduce our ability to create our neurotransmitters. Now, if our neurotransmitters are not being produced correctly, efficiently, we start to chase them. So we are hardwired to chase things like dopamine and serotonin, our reward pathways. These have been essential for human survival. So we go for things that will give us quick fixes, and sugary treats and carbohydrates will do this. So the way that it works, and I'll break it down in serotonin, and it's a similar mechanism when it comes to dopamine and other neurotransmitters. But serotonin is synthesized from tryptophan. And when we consume sugar, the pancreas releases insulin. Insulin will pull all of these nutrients out of the blood and push them into the cells, except for tryptophan. It will leave tryptophan circulate in the bloodstream. Now the tryptophan is in higher quantities. The tryptophan is available to be synthesized into serotonin. So now we get a serotonin fix. So we feel good, but this is short-lived. So it spikes and then it crashes. So now we're looking for another fix. So now it's another piece of chocolate, or it's another piece of, bread or pizza or whatever your go-to is. And then now we're stuck in this vicious circle because we're chasing these dopamine and serotonin fixes, and we're doing it through diet, and we can't break the cycle. Understanding that removing these toxic compounds and the compounds that block our body's ability to make these neurotransmitters, it empowers us to make better decisions. Understanding that we need animal proteins and fats in order to make these neurotransmitters, and try to be devoid of grains in particular. Grains in particular are incredibly damaging to the production of neurotransmitters. Just removing grains is going to see a benefit in the production of neurotransmitters. Just understanding that one thing will allow us to not make bad decisions. But it's also worth bearing in mind that most grains and other plants also, they're treated with herbicides, pesticides in the form of glyphosate. Now, glyphosate, the herbicide that is used on grains predominantly, it blocks a pathway in the body called the shikimate pathway. The shikimate pathway allows us, it's the input to the shikimate pathway allows us to create up to 95% of our neurotransmitters, because 95% of our neurotransmitters are made in our gut. Glyphosate blocks the shikimate pathway. It stops our body's ability to create most of our neurotransmitters. So when we are consuming compounds that have been sprayed, particularly grains with this compound, we're already on the back foot. So the biggest thing that we can do is come away from the grains and anything else that is sprayed with this toxic compound. And for me, that was the biggest thing. Sugar, it blocks the prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex is what allows us to make sensible choices. And when we block the prefrontal cortex, we will do silly things. This is why we will get up at 2 a.m. and drive to the local shop for, a chocolate bar or a fast food restaurant, for example. Now, understanding that that's what's happening empowers you to make better choices. And another piece of advice that I give to clients is that, if you don't have these compounds in the house, then they don't call to you in the night. You're far less likely to make that 2 a.m. trip if these compounds are not in the house. So don't buy them. If you live in a household with other members who are consuming these compounds, if your children have them, or, your partner or husband, wife, so on and so forth. And I know this sounds incredibly silly, but I promise this works. Put these compounds into a cupboard. That is their cupboard. And you mentally tell yourself that is not for you. That cupboard is not yours. This cupboard is yours, and this cupboard is yours. This cupboard is not for you. And just by programming your brain into telling yourself that is not for you, you stop going in there. And yes, I know you can physically go in, but just by saying that to yourself, it does help. The same with a fridge. Leave one shelf in the fridge for them and their treats. That part isn't for you. And have other things on hand. If other things will allow you to stay away from these sugary treats, keep them there. If you want a low carb or ketogenic friendly bar or something, that is by far a better choice than consuming these other toxic compounds. You can make better choices in regards to blocking the cravings for the sugar also. And a few simple tips. We can increase cholecystokinin, which is a hormone that allows us to block satiety signaling, or it allows us to block cravings. Apologies. So we can increase this with omega-3s and saturated fats. So eat more omega-3s. Eat more saturated fats and proteins. That allows us to block these. Melanocyte-stimulating hormone, MSH, can also be stimulated by sunlight. So get out in the sun, get some UVA through the eyes. That's how we increase melanocyte-stimulating hormone. Glutamine, a powder that we can add to water and drink if we have cravings. These are all tools that you can implement to help prevent these sugar cravings. But for me, understanding that mechanism in which the neurotransmitters are created and understanding that the second you consume that sugary treat or whatever your go-to is, now you're in the cycle. And the only way to break that cycle is by making that better choice in order to in regards to eating more animal proteins and avoiding those sugary treats. Every time we consume them, you're blocking the prefrontal cortex and you're further fueling those cravings. And again, the grains, we need to remove the grains. 1, the phytic acid, 2, the lectins, and 3, the glyphosate. But for me, Anna, when I removed the grains, I began to feel a lot happier. And the grains, for me include oats also, other breakfast cereals, toast, breads, pastas. Just by making that one change, I believe will allow you to overcome these issues. We've seen that, the lack of production of these neurotransmitters has been directly linked to psychosis, and a ketogenic lifestyle has been shown to even reverse this in a high percentage of cases, which is absolutely incredible. Medication isn't always the answer. I'm not saying that there isn't a place for medication, but let's look at the root cause. What we put into our body has the biggest impact. If we put toxins in, then we're going to get toxins out. So let's make better choices. Let's eat real food and avoid these toxic compounds.
Thank you for that, Richard. Have you ever perhaps read the book Homo Sapiens from Yuval Harari? It's a very,
No.
like, it's a thick book, and for me, I've been reading that book for, I want to say, a year or two now, because I would read a bit and then I would contemplate on it. And now at the part where he speaks a lot about the Cultural Revolution, and where he actually says, we have to think about it. Did we really domesticate wheat, or did wheat domesticate us as humans? And where he speaks about how everything that we as Homo sapiens had known and had done as part of our evolution up to that point was kind of just abruptly changed within such a short period of time when we started incorporating agriculture in our lives. And when you spoke earlier about getting to the metal box, or sitting in the metal box, and things like that, that kind of also reminds me of that, because I feel like that's the point where humans also started to work, and where you started having, like, I want to say, the rich and the wealthy versus the peasants, the workers, and so. And I wanted to hear your thoughts on that. So, I mean, it's not, let's be honest, the majority of us, we have to work, we have to, we have to make a living. So how do we manage the societal pressures in our life? And I want to kind of generalize. I guess we're talking about men's health today, but also for women. What are your suggestions of kind of just working around that, and maybe trying to find ways to live our passion and our purpose?
Yeah, I think that is incredibly important. Most of us do have to work. I'm incredibly lucky, if you will, because I love what I do. I used to be a purchasing manager for an electrical engineering company. I was on a good wage, and I came away from that to follow my passion. It's led to some incredibly stressful times in my life. I haven't told many people this, but it has resulted in me being homeless for 11 months because I put everything that I owned into the business in order to help. A lot of what I do is for free. So I do a lot of lives and public speaking events. There are charged services also for consultations and things, but I try to put out as much free information as I can. I love what I do, but I've been probably more stressed than I've ever been previously, but I don't feel that I am, because I love what I do. Yes, we need money, and work is important. And I think, the reason I say this is, look, you should always follow your passion. If there's something that you're passionate about, then there's a saying, isn't there, that if you love what you do, then you never work a day in your life. As much as I love what I do, it can be and is stressful, but I do enjoy it. So follow your passion. If you are in a position in which you have to work and you cannot get out of that, then there are things that I believe will help. The diet is incredibly important, because, again, this is going to have a major impact on how the neurotransmitters are created. Besides from that, what I find is people who come into this lifestyle, we become biohackers. We begin to look at how the body works. Things like grounding, getting outside barefoot, for example. And I know this sounds like woohoo, but it is heavily science-based. Get out in nature. Go for a walk on the beach, with no shoes on. Meditation. I don't know how to meditate. I can't sit here and say that I practice meditation, but what I do find helps me is I listen to high frequency meditation music in the night. And I find that this allows me to wake up feeling fresh, refreshed, and ready to face the day. Get up early in the morning, get out in the sun. It doesn't even have to be sunny. Just get out in nature, surround yourself with nature. And I believe surrounding yourself with positive people. There are so many people on this planet who are black holes. And we all know some of them. And, many of our friends are black holes. These are the type of people that, every time we see them, the world is ending. And they just tell you about all of their problems. And I know this is what friends do. We need to talk about problems, but there are some people who will never ask you how you are and care about it. These people are all for themselves, and they just suck your energy. They're like vampires. So what I've done is I've removed the black holes from my life. It's not to say that I'm not still friends with some of these people, but I just choose not to spend my time around them for prolonged periods of time. Surround yourself with positive people. Surround yourself with people who are like-minded. And these types of people are the type of people who you may find in the gym. So get into the gym, go to a class, even if it's a yoga class, or it doesn't even have to be physical. It could be a knitting class or a book club, whatever it is. Just surround yourself with like-minded, positive people, because their energies will feed on to you and you'll bounce off each other. It's incredibly draining and taxing to be around people who are negative all the time. And it is important to support friends and family. But that was one of the biggest things that I've done outside of the health and well-being and the nutrition sort of aspect, is surrounding yourself with positive people. If we look at, the blue zones, let's put this out there, the blue zones, these are, there's more than 5 now, but originally 5 locations in the world in which they had high levels of centenarians, people who live beyond 100. And it was believed that the reason these people lived beyond 100 was because they were predominantly vegetable based. And we know this not to be the case. And I recently released a podcast looking into this, and all of these areas they predominate animal proteins. But I'm not going to go off on a tangent. My point to this is that all of these locations have good social networks. They all have, they're in areas away from, the hustle and bustle of city life. They're all in areas in which family is incredibly important. They all have a good support network, and that is very important. So surround yourself with positive people. Get out in nature, get out barefoot, get into the sunlight. The sun doesn't even have to be there. Just get outside without the sunglasses, get some UVA through the eyes early in the morning and late at night. Let the UVA hit your skin and increase all of these positive compounds within the body, the nitric oxide and so on and so forth. And these are things that will allow you to gravitate to a happier life. I've joined a running club. I go running with them twice a week. Sometimes we go on a cycle once or twice a week. Sometimes if we're cycling, we don't get much opportunity to speak, but you just feel happy. You're out, you're in nature. Your wind is hitting your face. At some parts you're fighting for your life because you're struggling to keep up with some of these guys who are incredibly fast, but you come home and you feel incredibly refreshed, and that's really important, so it's all of those things. But take the black holes out of your life, surround yourself with positive people.
Thank you, Richard. I think you summarized it so well for us now. And I think that's also the perfect way to end off today's live. So thank you again so much for being here with us. I think just before we say goodbye, maybe you can just tell the audience members how they can reach you, where they can find out more about you.
Fantastic. Thank you. And again, thank you very much. Always thoroughly enjoy chatting. You can find me on my website is theketopro.com. You can contact me through there. I'm on Instagram as keto_pro. My personal profile on there is Richard_Anthony_Smith. So you can get me through there. I'm on YouTube as the Keto Pro. Lots of content. I think we currently have over 130 odd videos on there discussing, lots of things. I go live on YouTube every Sunday with a colleague of mine, Stephen Thomas. We go live every Sunday at 7 p.m. And then we go live for an additional 30 minutes on Rumble after that. And this is a means for Q&A. So the sessions are Q&A questions. I also have a private group on school called the low-carb group, or the low-carb school group. You can find that through any of my connections, but it's this is a private group that you can join. Stephen and I go live in there every Monday for Q&A, and it's the same setup as it is with you and I now, Jana. It's a Zoom setup, so it's a means for people to ask questions. The thing with the YouTube lives is someone will type a question and it's very difficult to get that conversation going because of the volumes of questions. So if we haven't fully answered the question, it's difficult to come back and forth. But the school group allows us to do that. It's a private group. So there's between 10 to 20 people that are live each week on there. And it's a means to touch base and ask questions. But feel free to reach out to me through any of those. Yeah, and I think that's about it. I'm also on Facebook and under the same Keto Pro and Richard Smith. But I'm sure you'll find me. Just Google search and I'm sure you'll find me.
Thank you so much. What we'll also do is we'll just pop all the links to all your different platforms in the comment section of this Facebook Live, so everyone can also just see where to find you. Thank you so much, Richard. Thank you so much to our lovely audience members. Thank you for joining us. And we will see you again next week for our Facebook Live with Prop Notes, which has just moved 1 week earlier. Usually we do the last Thursday of each month. So next week we'll just do it on the 20th. So we'll see you all then. Thank you so much. Bye.